Chapter 6, A Gift of a Woe. Welcome to Wednesday, What If, by the Storyteller. What if Wednesday Addams was a witch, just like her ancestor Goody Addams? What if Wednesday was called upon by Goody when her powers started manifesting a year earlier than in the original timeline, and she met Tyler before Miss Thornhill, a.k.a. Laura Gates? Like, comment, and subscribe to be updated. Chapter 6, A Gift of a Woe. Wednesday's perspective. Adele's insistence on dragging me around the mall had stretched the limits of my patience. Countless shopping bags weighed down my arms, and yet, the distraction wasn't enough to silence the nagging thoughts about Tyler. Of course, I'd never admit that to anyone, least of all my cousin. Still, there was no escaping it. I was aware of his every move, his strange moods, and, though I wouldn't openly acknowledge it, the dangerous path he seemed to be walking. We reached the Apple store, and I immediately felt my frustration rise. I didn't need a phone. Not now, not ever. It was just another tether to the world I'd rather remain detached from. I don't need a phone, I muttered under my breath, my gaze fixed on the storefront, already beginning to turn away. Really? What happens when summer vacation comes? How are you going to check up on your monster? Adele's words were sharp, and somehow, they settled like a weight on my chest. She had a way of turning my thoughts into something tangible, something I couldn't ignore. My monster. I hated the way she phrased it. It made Tyler sound like some sort of horror story villain. But there was no use in denying it, I was concerned about him, even if I couldn't quite understand why. I wanted to protest, but instead, I found myself following her inside, too tired to argue. Adele barely looked back, gliding toward the latest model of phone on display. What do you think of this? The latest model? I didn't care about the phone, but I couldn't exactly say that, could I? Instead, I just stood there, arms crossed, watching her signal to the staff. Excuse me, we'll take this one with 500 gigabytes storage, and an all-black phone case. Her fingers slid the black credit card into the machine without hesitation. Money meant little to her, just like it meant little to me. In our world, it was merely a tool, a means to an end, not something to obsess over. The fact that we could buy anything without worrying about it was something I had learned to take for granted long ago. It was a fact of life, something we were both accustomed to. The cost of a phone, a necklace, or a piece of jewelry didn't matter. The real currency was control, and that was something Adele had in abundance. She turned back to me. Have you thought of a gift for your monster yet? The question caught me off guard, but I masked it quickly with a neutral expression. No. You're so hopeless, she sighed, though her smile remained. I know. If you want to keep an eye on him, how about we put a spell on an obsidian necklace, a bracelet, or maybe a dog tag? A spell? I hadn't really thought of that. Of course, Adele had a knack for making even the most ridiculous ideas sound plausible. Her business acumen and witchcraft were both dangerously effective, a combination that made her more formidable than most. She was, after all, Adele Addams, always 5 steps ahead. I knew if she thought it was a good idea, there was something to it. We walked into a jewelry store, and Adele wasted no time. Excuse me, do you have an obsidian dog tag necklace? The manager led us to a display, and I looked over the options, my fingers brushing over the pendants. I wasn't sure why I was even here. Tyler wasn't the type to care about a necklace, but then again, it wasn't really about him, was it? It was about me keeping an eye on him. This was just a subtle way to control the situation without confronting it head-on. What do you think? Adele asked, her voice laced with amusement. Do you think your boyfriend will like it? The word boyfriend sounded strange coming from her. But as much as I wanted to deny it, a part of me did wonder what Tyler would think if I gave him something like this. It wasn't exactly romantic, but it was practical. A way to keep track of him without appearing too involved. I reached for the pendant, a mahogany and obsidian piece. It felt solid, grounding in a way I couldn't quite explain. This one, I said, barely pausing to consider my decision. Adele didn't seem to notice my momentary hesitation. She was already chatting with the manager about the purchase, and I was left standing there, staring at the necklace. The cool, dark stone seemed to mirror the uncertainty I'd been feeling for days now. I wasn't sure if I was giving it to Tyler as a symbol of protection or as a way to tether myself to something I couldn't quite understand. The irony of it all didn't escape me. I was using magic, psychology, and money to keep an eye on a boy who couldn't even make sense of his own transformation. I could feel Adele's gaze on me, but I didn't look. I had to admit, even if I wouldn't say it out loud, Adele's insights on relationships and psychology, however annoying, had a way of cutting through the clutter, and while I would never admit it aloud, her advice, strange as it was, seemed to make the world I was navigating a little less chaotic. And for once, maybe I could let her help. When Wednesday walked into the hotel room, the heavy rustling of shopping bags immediately caught everyone's attention. The students, who knew her as the one who avoided shopping at all costs, stared in disbelief. The last person anyone expected to be hauling bags full of clothes was her. Xavier raised an eyebrow and chuckled. "Wow, looks like you went on a shopping spree." Wednesday didn't look up from her bags, but her voice was as dry as ever. "It wasn't my choice." Eden's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Oh my God, Wednesday, what did you get?" She rushed over, practically tearing the bags open before Wednesday had a chance to set them down. The excitement quickly deflated as Eden sifted through the black and white clothing. "Wait, this is all black and white?" she asked, slightly disappointed. Bianca, ever the pragmatist, leaned against the wall, her lips curving into a small, dry smile. "At least she's easy to shop for." There was a certain amusement in her voice, as if she'd always suspected that Wednesday's style was simple to predict: black, more black, and some white to break it up. Eden picked through the clothes and found a few black boots that, while stylish, felt almost too normal for someone like Wednesday. The clothes were sleek, luxurious, and undoubtedly expensive. It wasn't the edgy, DIY style Wednesday was known for, it was more refined, almost like a high-fashion version of her usual dark aesthetic. She glanced at Bianca, who raised an eyebrow in return. "Is this the family aesthetic?" Bianca mused aloud. "I mean, Wednesday's all black and white, but this," she motioned to the bags, "looks like Adele just walked off a runway." The door creaked open, and in walked Adele Addams, Wednesday's older cousin. With her, she carried an air of confidence that immediately filled the room. Adele was wearing a designer black top, paired with tailored leather jeans that clung to her legs like second skin. Her boots were knee-high, polished, and paired with a striking red leather jacket that gave her outfit just the right pop of color. It was as if she'd stepped off the cover of a fashion magazine. Her aesthetic was similar to Wednesday's, dark and gothic, but with a modern twist. Her clothes were sleek and meticulously curated, as if each piece came from the latest Fashion Week collection. "See?" Bianca whispered to Xavier. "Definitely a family thing." Adele smiled at them and gave a casual shrug. "What can I say? I'm here to help Wednesday branch out of her usual look." Wednesday shot her a deadpan look, but didn't argue. She was too tired from the forced excursion to care much about what anyone thought. "I don't like shopping," she muttered, her usual scowl in place. Adele raised an eyebrow and glanced at the students. If she had her way, she'd never step foot in a store. "I had to drag her, kicking and screaming," Adele admitted with a wink, clearly not bothered by the admission. "I had to do all the picking out, of course." Xavier laughed quietly, clearly enjoying the rare moment of seeing Wednesday forced to shop. "I thought the whole point was that you were the ultimate, no-nonsense shopper." "I was," Wednesday replied flatly. But apparently, no wasn't an option today. While the group continued discussing Wednesday's uncharacteristic wardrobe change, Eden's eyes gleamed as she noticed something shiny tucked away inside one of the bags. "Oh, what's this?" She grabbed a small box and opened it eagerly, revealing a mahogany and obsidian dog tag necklace. The moment Eden's eyes landed on the necklace, her excitement exploded. "Oh my God," she screamed, bouncing on the bed as her face lit up with disbelief. "Is this for Tyler?" she asked, practically vibrating with energy. Wednesday didn't even blink. She glanced at the necklace with mild disinterest, her expression unchanged. "It's just jewelry," she said in a neutral tone. Eden continued bouncing on the bed, not caring that Wednesday was barely reacting. "I can't believe it. This is huge. You actually bought something for Tyler?" Bianca shot Adele a quick glance and raised an eyebrow. "I guess that's thanks to you, huh?" she said dryly. "Wednesday's hopeless when it comes to these things." Adele simply smirked, crossing her arms. "You're welcome." She was enjoying this moment far more than she probably should have, clearly relishing in the fact that her cousin was slowly being dragged into the realm of feelings. Wednesday, however, simply stared at the necklace in Eden's hands, her face unreadable. She didn't need to admit it, didn't need to say anything, but there was a small, unspoken part of her that did feel something, a shift she wasn't sure how to interpret. Tyler was complicated, and so was she. But for once, maybe it wasn't so hard to admit that something had changed. Even if she would never say it out loud. Instead, she looked away, not answering Eden's excitement, and let the conversation shift to something else. After all, she wasn't ready to give anyone that satisfaction just yet. Wednesday's perspective. I could feel the weight of their gazes shifting, but I refused to indulge in whatever they thought was happening. What really bothered me, though, was the phone. I quickly slid it out of my bag and tucked it under my arm, hiding it from view. No one needed to know about this, especially not my classmates. I wasn't exactly eager for anyone to find out I had a new phone, courtesy of Adele, of all people. They'd have a field day with that. They'd never let me hear the end of it. Principal Weems sat back in her chair at the fine dining restaurant, taking in the lively conversation at the table. Her eyes flicked to the two Addams cousins, and she couldn't help but reflect on the stark contrast between them. Adele, always poised, effortlessly charming, and so skilled at making trouble look like art, was practically the picture of grace, even in the most chaotic moments. She had a way of slipping under the radar, keeping her hands clean while orchestrating mayhem in the background. It had been that way when she was at Nevermore. Her intelligence and subtlety made her a master at bending the rules without ever truly breaking them. And then there was Wednesday, equally brilliant but far more obvious in her intentions. If Adele was a ghost slipping through the cracks, Wednesday was a wrecking ball that didn't care about the damage she caused. She made no effort to conceal her disdain for authority, and her destructive tendencies were worn proudly like a badge. There was no subtlety to her rebellion, she was as blunt and open as she was dark. It struck Weems again how similar yet different the two were. They both had a knack for stirring up trouble. It was as though their very existence was an invitation for disorder. But where Adele's trouble was wrapped in a veneer of charm and strategy, Wednesday's was raw, unfiltered, and almost liberating in its honesty. The way Wednesday handled losing in the tournament spoke volumes. "Congratulations on winning the MVP medal, Friday." Adele's voice rang out with forced cheer, capturing the moment on her phone. The irony wasn't lost on Weems, especially since winning was probably the last thing Wednesday cared about. The frown on her face said it all. "I quit," Wednesday said flatly, her eyes dark as she glared at the medal around her neck, as though it were a weight rather than a prize. Adele, unfazed, gave a small laugh. "Don't say that now. Your team did pretty well." "It would have been better if we actually won," Wednesday retorted, still brooding. Adele raised her hand dramatically. "Let's celebrate anyway." "It's on me." That was the thing about Adele, she never let anything get to her. Not even the defeat of the team. If anything, it seemed to amuse her. The dinner that followed was nothing short of extravagant, of course. But Weems had been surprised by the apparent lack of rebellion that evening. It was as if Adele's world of trouble was a carefully managed chaos, while Wednesday's was simply chaos with no intention of hiding it. Over dinner, the conversation drifted. "What are you doing these days, Miss Addams?" Weems asked, genuinely curious about how Adele had turned out after leaving Nevermore. Adele's response came with the ease of someone who knew exactly where she was headed in life. Well, I got a business major, I'm a certified therapist, and I just graduated from Yale Law. So, if you ever need a lawyer, Friday, feel free to call me. She smiled as she took a sip of her wine, her eyes glinting with mischief. Weems didn't quite know how to respond to that, so she shifted the conversation. Why do you call Wednesday, Friday? Adele's smile grew wider, and she launched into an explanation with a flair for storytelling. Because Wednesday's child is full of woe, while Friday's child is full of love. You know the poem, don't you? Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday's child is full of grace, Wednesday's child is full of woe, Thursday's child has far to go, Friday's child is loving and giving, Saturday's child must work for a living, and the child born on the Sabbath day is bonny, blithe, good, and gay. Weems took in the rhyme, but it was Adele's next words that caught her attention. Her full name is Wednesday Addams, but calling her Friday has very little effect on her personality. She's a woe through and through. Wednesday herself didn't look at all pleased by this. Dare to call me Friday, and I'll ignore you. Adele laughed, clearly enjoying the back and forth. There are already a lot of Fridays, so we'll just call you Wednesday. Weems watched the banter with some amusement, but also with a trace of concern. These two were a handful, both of them, but they wore their trouble in different ways. One was a whirlwind that built chaos, with no real effort to conceal it. The other, well, Adele had a talent for making everything look so effortless, as if all her troublemaking was just part of a greater plan. The topic shifted to something a bit more personal when Bianca asked, "Why does Wednesday only wear black and white?" Adele's response was quick and dry. She's allergic to color, like most of us Addams. In fact, her allergy is worse than all of us combined. She's an Addams through and through. You mean your whole family wears black and white? Bianca asked, raising an eyebrow. Adele gave a slight shrug. Some can wear other darker colors, but black and white is the Addams family color palette. Speaking of the whole family, permission to have Nevermore host Wednesday's quinceañera/debutante ball/mazurka? Weems nearly choked on her drink. A quinceañera? At Nevermore? Adele carried on, as if the request were nothing more than a casual ask. We would have it in New Jersey, but Pugsley is already having his there, and Aunt Sloane doesn't want to use the same venue twice. It's either Nevermore, or we go to Europe. She looked at Weems, her expression serious now. So make sure that you practice your fencing skills, Wednesday. Don't get too confident and get a big head. Weems blinked, processing what Adele had just said. A quinceañera? At Nevermore? The sheer magnitude of it overwhelmed her. She had dealt with the Addams family before, of course, but this? This was on another level entirely. There was no denying it now. The Addams girls were going to be a challenge, together or apart. Wednesday was a hurricane of defiance and darkness, while Adele was a carefully controlled storm, weaving through life's chaos with a kind of grace that was both maddening and impressive. And as for their request to hold a lavish family event at Nevermore? Weems had a sinking feeling that whatever happened next would shake the school to its foundations. Adele stood beside Wednesday in front of the Nevermore bus, watching the wheels of her cousin's plans move, even if she didn't fully understand the logic behind them. It wasn't that she didn't trust Wednesday, far from it, but this situation felt different. The stakes were higher, the risks more dangerous, and yet there was that stubborn, unshakable resolve in Wednesday's eyes that Adele knew too well. You want to put our people on your boyfriend for the summer? Adele's voice was low, measured, more out of concern than anything else. She had seen the way Wednesday's mind worked, and sometimes it worried her. You sure about this? No, Wednesday replied flatly, not even a hint of doubt in her tone. Adele paused, a small frown curling at the edge of her lips. She had expected something more, a defense, an argument, perhaps even an explanation, but Wednesday just shut the idea down with a simplicity that made Adele's worry grow. Are you really sure? You don't know who else might be listening. If that information gets out, she trailed off, her words hanging in the air, as she glanced over at the bus and whispered. Only a lunatic would unlock a hide. It's fine, Wednesday said with that infuriating calm. I can look after him with the amulet. I'll tell him this news when I get back. Adele didn't let it go. She stepped closer, lowering her voice further, scanning their surroundings. It was a habit, a reflex, always assessing the danger in every situation, even in moments of supposed safety. Wednesday, no. You can't just waltz in and drop that kind of bombshell on him. You have no idea who might be listening, who might hear. You don't know what kind of risks you're really taking. This isn't something you can just. But Wednesday was already looking past her, her sharp gaze sweeping over the bus, her mind clearly elsewhere. That's what worried Adele the most, when Wednesday started shutting down the conversation without even realizing it. I'll tell him when I get back, Wednesday repeated, her tone leaving no room for argument. The finality in her words left Adele with nothing more to say, but it didn't ease the tightness in her chest. Adele knew how this would go. She trusted Wednesday, completely, but trust didn't make everything safe. She was still worried, but she knew there was nothing she could do. Not now, not when Wednesday had already made up her mind. With a resigned sigh, Adele pushed her concerns aside for the moment. Fine, she said, though the word felt heavy. But be careful. Please. Wednesday gave her a brief, almost imperceptible nod, but Adele couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than her cousin was letting on. For now, though, she would have to trust her. And that, for better or worse, was all she could do. As the bus pulled up to Nevermore, Wednesday's focus remained unwavering. She had no time for the trivialities of the outside world, no interest in distractions. The only thing that mattered was Tyler, and she would do whatever was necessary to ensure his safety. It was a strange thing to admit, even to herself. But he had become an unexpected constant in her life, and that was something she couldn't just ignore. Once back in her dorm, she quickly made her way to the small wooden desk that always seemed to collect dust in the corner. She pulled out the mason jar containing the ashes of Goody's old spellbook, the remnants of a connection to the past. The faint smell of ancient parchment still clung to the edges of the jar, despite its desolate contents. The floor was cool beneath her feet as she knelt, drawing a pentagram in the center of the room, marking each corner with a candle. The flames flickered with a slow burn, casting shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. She placed the black box in the center, opened the jar, and poured the ashes into it, the fine dust swirling through the air like memories she couldn't quite grasp. With a steady hand, she closed the box and whispered softly, Decinera resurgimus. The moment she opened the box again, the familiar leather-bound grimoire emerged, as pristine and unscathed as it had ever been. A faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. She scanned the book with the same meticulous attention she always afforded her tasks, her mind searching for the right spell. She would find it. She had to. Before she could continue her search, Goody's presence materialized before her. The room shifted, the walls fading into the dense forest of Nevermore as she stood there, cloaked in her spectral form. The air felt thick, charged with an eerie energy, and Wednesday's brow furrowed as she regarded her ancestor. You can't change the future, Wednesday. Goody's voice was soft but final, like a distant echo in the vast forest. Is that so? Wednesday's voice was unwavering, calm. Then what are you trying to do? Goody's ghostly figure hovered, watching her intently as she continued to flip through the pages of the book, undeterred. Tell me how I can protect Tyler. Goody didn't respond immediately, instead observing her with a heavy sadness that seemed to linger in the air. The path of a raven is solitary. You won't be able to trust anyone. Maybe so, Wednesday replied, her eyes still glued to the pages, her fingers tracing over the words as if searching for the right key to unlock a secret. But at least I can protect those who matter to me. Goody's gaze softened at this, and then, as if guided by an invisible force, the pages of the book began to turn. They shifted, past the spells of healing and curses, until they settled on one. The words seemed to shimmer in the candlelight, drawing Wednesday's focus entirely. A remember spell? Wednesday murmured under her breath, not fully understanding. She looked up at Goody, her brows furrowed. How is that going to stop him from turning into a hide? It doesn't, Goody replied, her voice tinged with resignation. It only lessens the effects his master will have on him, makes their commands weaker, less effective. But the only way to fully sever the bond is to kill his master. To sever the connection completely. Wednesday's mind absorbed the words with clinical precision. It wasn't the solution she had hoped for, but it was the one she had expected. Protecting Tyler would take more than a simple spell, it would take sacrifice, danger, and the potential for irreversible consequences. She stood up, tucking the book away as she reached into the drawer of her desk and pulled out the gift she had prepared for him, a small, obsidian dog tag necklace, intricately carved with symbols meant to shield him. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. Thank you, Wednesday said quietly to Goody, though she knew the spirit could not hear her in the way she would want. The knowledge was enough, for now. There were no easy answers, no simple solutions. But she would keep fighting, for Tyler's sake. As she closed the drawer and slipped the necklace into her pocket, she couldn't help but feel a fleeting, unsettling sense of dread. The path she was walking was fraught with danger, but there was nothing she could do to turn back now. It was her responsibility, her choice. And she would protect him, no matter the cost. Tyler's perspective. I was surprised to see Wednesday walk into the Weathervane the next day. I mean, I wasn't exactly expecting her, but I couldn't deny the warmth that spread through me when I saw her. She had this way about her, like everything else around her just didn't matter. I gave her a small smile as I moved behind the counter to make her coffee. How was your fencing tournament? Did you win? I asked, trying to make conversation, even though I knew I probably wouldn't get much of a response. I won the MVP medal, she said with her typical flat expression. But in general, the team lost. At least she won something, right? At least you won something, I said, handing her the coffee. We made our way to our usual table, and I noticed she had something in her hand. She set it down in front of me, and my heart skipped a beat. Adele helped me pick it out, she said, her tone as nonchalant as always. I blinked, confused. You didn't have to. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Why would Wednesday buy me something? This was so out of the blue. Adele and Eden said it was necessary, she replied, looking almost indifferent. I opened the small box and, well, I had no clue what I was looking at first. The necklace was sleek, dark, and the kind of thing that looked like it belonged in a jewelry store, not in my hands. I didn't really know how to react, so I just mumbled, thanks, still unsure about why she was giving me such an expensive gift. You're not going to wear it? She asked, her tone almost challenging. Right now? I asked, glancing at her, a little thrown off. Was she really that serious? You don't have to show it off, she said flatly, her eyes fixed on me. Just wear it and hide it under your shirt. I'm not completely sold on it myself. I let out a small laugh. No, I'll wear it. I slipped the chain around my neck, not really caring what it looked like, just that she had given it to me. I wasn't sure why, but I wanted to wear it for her, even if I didn't fully understand the reason behind it. What else did you get? She reached into her pocket, sliding something else across the table. A phone. I raised an eyebrow. What happened to not wanting to be a slave to technology? I'm not making a habit of it, she replied, looking up at me. You and Adele are the only ones who know I have this, so don't go around blabbing my number. I just stared at her, a little unsure what to make of this turn of events. Why does your cousin know? She shrugged, not looking all that concerned. She's the one who bought it for me. Don't think you can call me whenever you feel like it, though. If this thing becomes a distraction, it's going in the trash. I couldn't help but laugh, despite myself. Just let me save my phone number, then. I took the phone and noticed there were hardly any contacts. Maybe a couple? It felt a little surreal to see how little she let people into her world. But something about it, it felt different now. Like, I was becoming part of that small circle. I saved my number, handed the phone back to her, and smiled. You don't have to worry about me, Wednesday. I won't bug you. She didn't say anything, but for some reason, the silence between us felt comfortable. And, for the first time, it didn't feel like it was just me trying to figure her out. It felt like she was letting me in, just a little. Maybe it was the necklace. Or maybe it was because she trusted me enough to give me her phone number. Either way, I could tell, I was starting to fall for her, and it didn't feel nearly as terrifying as I thought it might. It felt right. Like, comment, and subscribe to be notified for updates on this series.